Now to the agency tasked with making sure none of us brings a shampoo bottle larger than 3 ounces on the plane. The Transportation Security Administration, the TSA, is considering stopping passenger screenings at about 150 small and medium-sized airports. According to internal TSA documents obtained by CNN, passengers and luggage would be checked once they arrive at a major airport. And if you're sitting there wondering, wait, we've been doing this for so long, why would this change and who would support this? Let's put those questions to a couple of experts. My two Pauls. Paul Cruikshank is a CNN terrorism analyst, and Paul Schmick is a former TSA training specialist. So, guys, thank you so much. And Paul Cruikshank, we are so used to going through the machines and our, shampoo bottles and everything else. Why would they want to change this? How would this be anything more than wanting to cut costs at, quote, lower risk airports?
Well, Brooke, I think it's stunning that they're even considering this. Al-Qaeda and ISIS continue to see aviation, commercial aviation, as a priority target, and that includes 50-person passenger jets. ISIS have told its supporters in the West, attack any target, big or small, Brooke. And if they were able to blow a 50-person passenger jet from the sky from one of these small airports where they're proposing to have no screening, then you would have a lot of panic, you would have a very big economic impact, and of course you have very significant loss of life. They say that 9/11 was a failure of imagination to anticipate. Well, you don't need a lot of imagination to see how without screening at these airports you could have greater opportunities to take control of an aircraft, to get into the cockpit, and of course we saw what happened on 9/11.
On 9/11, where some of these hijackers, right, came from a smaller airport in Maine on into Boston, onto, wreaking terror in this country. And so to you, Paul Schmick, what's the alternative? If you take all of these screening devices away from these smaller airports, what would we have instead?
So we don't know what that looks like yet, right? So what we're seeing is a reduction in a move to save $115 million that impacts about 10,000 passengers a day.
$115 million.
$115 million. So over the TSA budget of several $1 billion and under the larger DHS budget, it's a small amount of money. The challenge here is to see how much risk we're willing to take 17 years beyond 9/11. When we look at the risk overall, we know that aviation is still a hotbed for attacks. We know that not just locally or nationally, we know that globally. So it's just interesting to see the TSA move to this position and even consider it. And to me, this looks like we're just so far beyond 9/11 that we're starting to forget the pain and the anguish that was caused from civil aviation.
I mean, I couldn't find this, so can you give me another example other than saving money why the TSA would want to do this?
No, this is pure risk. So they're looking at the risk calculation and saying how much risk is in the smaller airports, and these are more regional, Brooke, right? So these are the smaller airports that go to actually connecting flights, and it's just looking at the risk and saying there's a great reduction of risk there. Let's reallocate that money and that staffing to higher risk airports.
Paul Cruikshank, how would that not be telegraphing to the terrorists what airports would be vulnerable? Last question.
It would absolutely be telegraphing that very fact. And Brooke, Al-Qaeda and ISIS have been doing a lot of R&D into laptop bombs, into underwear bombs, into shoe bombs. Well, if you don't have any screening at all, you don't need these kind of sophisticated devices necessarily to bring down an aircraft. Rudimentary explosives could be brought on board. And it could just be an extremist inspired by ISIS who perhaps goes onto the internet and learns how to build these kind of bombs. There are investigations into jihadi activity in all 50 states right now. That means every last corner of the United States. And make no mistake, if the vulnerability is there, they will go after it.
Paul Cruikshank, Paul Schmick, thank you so much for coming on that.